Hello and welcome to New Perspective አዲስቅኝት Media.
New Perspective አዲስቅኝት Media is a Toronto-based digital and broadcasting media outlet that focuses on immigration, literature and art, community and culture.
If you have comments, questions or suggestions, please email us at addisqinyit@gmail.com or call us at 647-761-7252.
You can listen to our weekly live radio on iHeartRadio, subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our app. Please visit our website at www.addisperspective.com. Welcome to our show, the New Perspective አዲስቅኝት. Keith
Yes, I'm very flattered that you invite me. It's
no, we are very honored to have you, Keith.
Keith was born in Toronto, Ontario on April 26, 1952. He lives in Toronto with his wife Mary. They have 3 adult children. Keith has worked as a novelist, a screenwriter and director after a brief career as a cabbie. His third novel, Cursed Blood of the Donnellys, published on September 28, 2019. The next novel, The American Problem, inspired by his experiences embedded with Canadian forces, Kandahar, Afghanistan, in 2009, is nearing completion, and Coppermine, published in 2011, has been optioned as a feature film. He is also editing a book written by 15 exiled writers that will come out later this year. He is a mentor and dedicated volunteer at the PEN Canada's Writers in Exile group and hosting a reading series that is going on 3 times a year at Hirut Jazz Club, an Ethiopian Jazz cafe on Danforth.
Recently you wrote a book, a very interesting book, novel, which you are about to convert into a series for with Bell Media now.
Yeah, it's here it is. It's
that's Coppermine.
Coppermine.
Okay. So this you are working on this novel now with Bell Media?
Well, the novel was published several years ago. And it tells a story. You were talking about historic drama, and I do love historic drama. I love, going back in history, but also I like to tell true stories. I like to dramatize true stories. Just that foundation of truth, that these things actually happened, that kind of excites me to interpret what the characters are like and what they did and the circumstances. I really enjoy. I've written over the years a couple of scripts and that are just based on not real events or real circumstances, but I do love real events and things that have happened. So Coppermine is the story of 2 Inuit hunters in 1914, so just after the turn of the century, 1914, who up in the Arctic encounter 2 white priests, 2 missionaries. Yeah. They're up in the area trying to convert the local Inuit to Christianity. And these hunters had never seen white men before, and they became totally convinced that the white men were possessed of demons and were going to kill them. So in self-defense, the 2 hunters killed the priests. And frankly, they ate a portion of their liver out of respect, which was the Inuit way with caribou and other animals. When you kill something, to show respect, you eat a portion of their organs. Anyway, the Sinizniak and Uluksuk were their names, and they were hunters. They were very esteemed hunters, highly respected. And 3 years after the killing of the priests, An RCMP officer shows up with an interpreter, and he investigates the death of the priests and lays a charge of murder against Sinizniak and Oluksuk. And they both admit, yes, they had to kill the priests. The priests were possessed of demons. And so the RCMP officer takes them south to Edmonton to stand trial, murder trial, double murder trial. And they arrive there. It takes them 14 months of travel to get from where they were arrested in what is now Kugluktuk on the Arctic Ocean to come back to Edmonton and stand trial. And it's a very interesting trial because it's two very different cultures, very different religions, different spiritualities.
Yeah. So they believe that the priest was possessed with demon.
Yes.
And the priest believes that they were possessed with demon as well?
No, well, the priests were somewhat desperate. They were starving to death. It was the 1st of November, and the snows were falling, and they had made enemies of some Inuit in the area by destroying the religious elements that the shamans had. They thought they were devil worshippers. So anyway, the priests had made themselves very unpopular in the area, and they were coming south. They were trying to get down south where they had a small cabin on Great Bear Lake, but they were still there were many days or even weeks away, and the winter had come in, and they were starving to death, and they were quite desperate. So they at gunpoint, they made the Inuit hunters pull their Komatak sleighs south when the hunters wanted to go north. And so they did this for 2 days, and then the priests were very threatening to them with guns, and they decided that they were going to be shot if they stayed around. So they killed the priests and went back to their families. So anyway, it was a big show trial where.
So on their way to Edmonton, it took 14 months, and so the trial happened.
Yes, the trial happened, and it was there were journalists from all over North America that were studying. There was a whole class of legal students from Harvard that came to Edmonton to see how Canadian law, British law, Canadian law would deal with these two, what they called at the time, Stone Age cannibals, because it was known that they had eaten the livers, and they had lived a very simple life. They had copper but no other metals. The white perception was that they were Stone Age. And even though they were very smart, very intelligent, excellent hunters, they were highly esteemed in their own culture. Intelligent men. They were seen as Stone Age cannibals by the whites in Edmonton.
Because the practice was cannibalism. They eat a portion of it.
That was their custom. Yes, if you kill an animal or a human, but the killing of humans was extremely rare in Inuit society. It's very seldom, but they just did what they would do if they had killed a caribou, and that was to eat the liver. But the point is that they were found not guilty by reason of self-defense.
Wow. How could that happen?
Well, because they truly believed that they were going to be killed by these priests. And the jury, a jury of 6 men, they acquitted them based on self-defense. And anyway,
they leave them free. I mean, finally they.
Well, yes, they became celebrities, and they were invited out to dinner by the mayor and his wife. The mayor's wife really took a shine to them, and they had Eskimo days for a couple of days. They had holidays in Edmonton, and they had a parade with the 2 Inuit hunters in the back of a Ford Model T that belonged to the mayor. They went on Ferris wheels, and they went to a fair. They went to a movie theater.
Whoa.
And so Sinizniak and Uluksak had quite an experience in Edmonton. But they were they became celebrities, and for a period of time.
Yeah.
And then the Catholic Church said this can't be allowed, and the Catholic Church convinced through the Governor General and the Attorney General in Ottawa, convinced the courts to try them a second time. And they were tried a second time. They were imprisoned, tried a second time. They were found guilty, and they were sentenced to hang. And they were going to hang, and there was a big hue and cry by citizens saying, "You can't hang them. That's terrible." And you found them not guilty before. Anyway, they were. It was commuted to 20 years in prison. Yeah. 20 years, which for these men is virtually a death sentence.
Wow.
And the Northwest Mounted Police, they were called Northwest Mounted Police at that point, as opposed to RCMP. Yeah. They said, well, okay, I'll tell you what, your sentence is 20 years, but we will make you special constables, and you will come and work for us up at the mouth of the Coppermine River. And that's what happened. Sinizniak and Uluksak became special constables under the Northwest Mounted Police, and they served the community at what is now Kugluktuk and Tree River, which is about 100 miles away, further down the Arctic coast. So that I've given away all my story. That's the story. But
that's where you went last week after.
Yes, I went to the mouth of the Coppermine.
Yeah,
and the community, which in 1917 was there was a man Koa, who was the chief hunter and the leader of this community at that time, and he actually appeared at the trial. But it is now called Kugluktuk, and it's a pretty little community of about 1,400 people near the mouth of the Coppermine River. So I went up there. What we require when we're going to do a feature film that involves the stories of this community, because many of the people are related to Sinizniak and Uluksak, and this is their story. Yeah. And I'm a white guy, and I'm coming in and saying we'd love to tell your story. Mm-hmm. But what we need to do that is to get the blessings, the endorsement, the support, and the blessings of that community. Yeah. So I went up there with the director, who is Anishinaabe First Nations, and we sat down with the elders and told the story, and they knew the story well. And as I say, we spoke with almost 40 elders in this group, and we said what we were going to do. And about 5 of them are related to Sinizniak and 2 of them to Uluksak, these hunters. Yeah. And we explained, and they said yes, they thought it was a good idea to have this story. And many of them had read Coppermine, my novel. Oh, yeah. And they said, yes, this story should be told as a movie. So we have their endorsement, we have their blessings. Nice. And we can go forward and do this. But
they agree the way you tell the story. They're happy about the way you tell it?
Yes, they are. The community of Kugluktuk, it's now called Kugluktuk, but it was a hunt camp. Yeah. They were nomadic in 1916. Mm. And so they would move out on the sea ice to hunt seals. Then they would come back to the mouth of the Coppermine to fish, and then they would go inland for caribou. So they would move in 1 year. They would settle in 3 different places to fish, go after seals, or to go after caribou.
Yeah. So what's your particular reason to pick out this story?
I find it. I've done a lot of criminal trials in my career. I've written a lot of about murders.
We will talk about the Donnellys family later.
Yes. Yeah, the Donnelly family. That was the Donnelly massacre, where a family was killed, and a similar situation where there's a trial afterwards. And I love trials. They're, they can go well, they can go badly, but they're almost like a chessboard. They're almost like a game, and you've got the prosecution and you've got the defense.
Yeah.
And so in Coppermine, that trial was very interesting, and equally interesting with the Black Donnellys book that I had written. I love trials. So what the trial became in Coppermine was, the white government, they had their own agenda. They wanted to establish control of the North.
Yeah.
And then you have the defense, who is saying, well, think of this from a Inuit perspective, an Inuit point of view. You have to, because Canadian law guarantees that you will be tried by a jury of your peers. And that would have been impossible to try to bring down a jury of Inuit to Edmonton. It would have taken years and cost all kinds of money. So the defense said to the jury, you have to, you are legally bound to think like, back then, an Eskimo, an Inuit. You have to think like an Inuit. And so the jury said, well, if we think in those terms, they are not guilty by reason of self-defense. They thought they were going to be killed. So anyway, the trial for me was very attractive, very interesting. It was a very Canadian trial. If you look at Wounded Knee in the United States, had Dakota, I guess that was, South Dakota, they had when one white man was killed, they had brought in the troops and they had annihilated 200 men, women, and children. That's how that had happened. But in Canada, not that we're that much greater with First Nations people, but they wanted a due process of law. They wanted these people brought down and to stand trial, and just that sense of fairness, not vengeance, not, they weren't trying to punish, they were trying to get to the truth of this.
That's very interesting. Do you think in this story, justice was served, especially the first trial? Then the second one was, where justice was manipulated. So
it was. You're absolutely right. It was manipulated. You can, from the point of view of all of these people, from the jurists who acquitted the two hunters, you can see it from their point of view. You can see it from the point of view of the hunters, and you go back in both the book and in the movie, we will as well, to show that they did have certain motivation, and they believed they were going to die. So there's the point of view also of the government, who wants to say, well, we maintain control of the North, for better or for worse. And then the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is going, 2 of our priests were murdered, and you can't let these guys go. From their point of view, if you let them go, then all of our missionaries in the North, there'll be targets on them. You shoot them, and you go south and for a trial, and you're acquitted, and you have a party. You can't let Sinisniak and Luxuk get away with this. So the dynamic of the story is that all of these points of view come into play. So, at first they're acquitted, then they're tried again, and they're found guilty, and they're sentenced to hang. And then that's commuted to 20 years in prison. And finally, the RCMP kind of takes over. You tell me what's fair. They made them special constables and sent them home.
That's really amazing. The question is, as a writer for you and for me, it's about the truth. So where is the truth? So, and who protects the truth, and who is responsible to safeguard the truth? I think the church traditionally have that right to protect the truth. It doesn't matter the Christian truth. All kinds of religions are saying that they are protecting the truth. They are serving the truth.
Yes.
So, but the Catholic Church jeopardize the moral ground that they have to stick on. So yeah. I think you showed you get that important conflict in your novel, and you showed how historically truth was manipulated and abused by the safeguard of the truth.
Yes. Yes.
If you have comments, questions, or suggestions, please email us at addisቅኝት@gmail.com or call us at 647-761-7252.
The truth is never simple.
Yes.
I mean, there's everyone has a different perspective on what the truth was.
Yeah.
For better or for worse. But the point is that in my book and in the film, there will be an empathy by the audience for the two hunters. The two hunters found themselves caught up in all of this, and they reacted in the way that they knew how to defend themselves. And I think, anyway, it's just a very interesting, complex story. Mm-hmm. And I try not to take sides too much, although the character of Sinisiak and Luxak is their attractive, interesting characters. But I try to show it from all points of view.
Both sides. Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, you follow the same storyline and plot in the film, or there is a change when it comes to?
Well, the problem is that a lot of it that is in the book has to be cut. We have to trim it down for time, so that there are a lot of plot lines, secondary plot lines that we cannot include in the film. But the main through line we will certainly have, and the main story of the actual murders and the investigation and the arrest and the long travel down to Edmonton and the trial itself, all of that will be in the movie, and it will be pretty authentic to exactly what happened. I start with the facts. When I'm trying to tell a story, I start with the facts, but I do occasionally manipulate the facts a little bit to make it more dramatic, more entertaining, to draw the audience in. So I do change. Life is kind of boring. You can't just tell a story of what happened and expect the audience to be entertained and engaged and so on. So I do change a little bit the facts, but I really do stand behind what I do as telling the truth of the situation.
I mean, you are lucky. Most novelists, see their novel was, written by other screenwriters, and they were complaining after the film was released. So you are lucky you can write your own script. So you know which one you cut and which one you include.
Well, I'm glad I've had that control, because I know what is the most important part of the story to tell. And it is a little bit heartbreaking when you have to say that whole plot line, all of those characters cannot be in the movie. We just don't have time. But I've written enough movies over the years that I know what we have to do. So it's not people telling me what I have to do. I know that this is the way to write the script and make it a really good, entertaining, compelling movie. just keeping the essence. I do believe in the story. I know what the essence of it is, and I like that control. So if I've written the novel, I would certainly like to write the script as well, which I'm doing.
So you both enjoy writing the script, a film script and a novel. Which one gives you more pleasure?
Well, it's a good question. It's a good question in that with a novel, you can get much deeper into it. There are some basic facts, like you can work for 2 years, 3 years to write a novel, and you get paid a certain amount. But you can work 6 months to write a film script, and you get paid 3 or 4 times that amount for a film script. So that's the basic truth of film versus publishing. But having said that, you have a much better chance of getting a book published than you do of having a movie made. So, I would say with the scriptwriters that I know, you can work extremely hard on 3 or 4 or 5 scripted projects, movie projects, and only one, even if you're lucky, one will get made. So, because it's so much more expensive. To publish a book costs whatever it costs, but to create a movie is $3 or $5 or $7 or $10 million, and the stakes are very high. So for every movie that is actually produced, believe me, there are 10 scripts out there that are not.
Yeah.
So it can be heartbreaking in that way. Publishing is more friendly. And you get to go deeper into the material and longer. And so publishing is very satisfying creatively. Film you have to be very thick-skinned. You do at the back of your mind understand that, when you're writing a script, well, you don't think about this, but it probably will not get produced.
Yeah,
and then when it gets produced, it feels really good.
And it gives you a chance to write another novel.
Yes, you're right. I mean, that's what I do. If I have a film produced, that will allow me a year or two to write another novel.
Yeah.
That will finance a year or two of my life, and yes, so it's good going back and forth. They're quite different writing disciplines, quite a different way of approaching.
That's interesting. I think most of your novels are made into movies, so you're lucky. So you produce 4 novels in total?
Yes. 3 to this point. I have a 4th that is out with an agency.
Yeah. And
we're just waiting to hear about when it will be produced, or when it'll be published.
Yeah. So all of them are based on historical facts, and I think a crime is part of the story. So that makes you a crime historical novelist, or what's the genre that you are?
That's pretty good, Gezan. I am a, what did you say, crime historian, crime writing historian, dramatic writer. Yes. Anyway, I love history, and crime. I used to do a lot of crime. That's sort of where I began, and I worked in the States doing movies of the week, true crime movies of the week for NBC or CBS in the 90s up to 2000 or so. And then movies of the week were no longer in fashion. They wanted dramatic series. So I did mini series at that point. But what is the point? Yeah, with true crime, when you have a murder, it immediately stimulates interest, and you want to know who's dead, why, who did it, what were the circumstances, are you going to find the guy or the woman that did it, and what's going to happen to them, and what other characters are involved in the in the story. So you already have a base of drama, because drama is conflict. You need if drama is all about a conflict that has to be resolved, or whether it's a crime is an obvious one, but the protagonist has something that has happened and there is conflict. There's a roadblock to what they want to accomplish, or there is, that's where drama, the essence of drama is conflict, and murder is the obvious kind of the most simple and basic kind of conflict.
I mean, writing an imaginative crime story, a drama, and writing a historical crime or based on a historical fact and a crime has two different things. So you already have the story, the material, the ending and the beginning.
Yes.
Is it? But you use your creative license and power to tell the story in a different way, in a dramatic way.
Well, usually true life doesn't provide a satisfying story.
Yeah.
Usually. So you, like if there's, things happen over a long period of time and you have to compress them. You have to make things happen over a short period of time to entertain and draw in an audience. You can't, in true life, the dramatic structure of the story is not very dramatic because it usually happens over a longer period of time. There are facts that aren't satisfying. Usually the ending of true crime is not that satisfying. And sometimes you have to kind of rework it a bit just to have people satisfied at the end. Whether the murderer gets off or the murderer gets convicted and sent to prison, or so it.
That's dull, it doesn't tell anything. So that's where you play your creative power.
Well, you want to satisfy the audience. I mean, ultimately, film and television are entertainment. Yeah. And as I say, I get stimulated by true stories that I know that people were here and these characters were in this circumstance and this happened. And I find that fascinating to work from that truth, those facts, and then make it a entertaining, compelling story.
That's interesting. Once you said in a comment to the question someone asked, what's the best thing about being a writer? So you said the best thing about being a writer is creating worlds and characters and messing around with them. It's essentially playing God. That's a very interesting.
Well, yeah, I'm not. I mean, I don't mean to imply that I'm arrogant, but it sure is fun messing around with characters, using characters, getting to know characters, getting to research history and an environment and a circumstance. I love doing the research. And then putting it into a, 90 minutes, say, a 90-minute movie that everyone can appreciate and enjoy. So, but you play God. You can bring in characters. You can, you can determine what the characters are thinking, how they behave, what they do. You have the freedom to do that. So, in a way, I know it sounds arrogant, but you do kind of play God. You say, okay, you can do this character will do this, and so that's the fun part. And
But I have to ask you something here. If you play God, in a creative world, in the imaginative world, are you worried about what happened to your characters, whether they get justice or not, whether they get a good life or not? Are you worried about their fate and their ending? Or just you play with them and you leave them as they are?
Well, no. I think it's really important at the end of a movie to have some kind of satisfying ending. Whether it's the bad guy gets put away, or someone finds true love, or what am I thinking of? Some kind of satisfying ending. Well, if you think about Coppermine, there was a degree of satisfaction in that they were found not guilty, and then they became celebrities, and they explored white society. These guys had never seen a wooden building when they left Kugluktuk. They'd never seen a wooden building or a horse, or certainly not a car or a wheel. They'd never seen anything, and they went to Boomtown, Edmonton. So that to me is really kind of fascinating. But moving along, then they are tried a second time because the Catholic Church demands that they have to be tried, and the Canadian government goes along with that, and they're found guilty, and they're going to hang. So the Catholic Church goes, yes, this is good, but the public goes, no, you don't want to. We can't kill these people. It's terrible, these hunters. So they are commuted to 20 years in prison, and that's good that they're not going to hang, but it's bad because they're going to spend 20 years in prison. So the end of it is that they are made special constables, and they serve very well back in their home as Northwest Mounted Police officers. So that is, to me, a relatively satisfying ending. That if you believe in Sinizniak and Luksuk, and you sympathize with them when they've gone through all of this, and then finally they can go home. And I like to think that is a satisfying ending once you've empathized with them, once you've found out where they're coming from, and you think they're interesting and enjoyable characters, if you will.
አዲስቅኝት በዩቲዩብ፣ በፌስቡክ፣ በቴሌግራም www.addisperspective.com እንዲሁም ሐሙስ ከ2 ፒኤም እስከ 10 ፒኤም ድረስ በቀጥታ የሬዲዮ ስርጭት በአይሄርት ሬዲዮ ላይ ታገኙናላችሁ። ቻናላችንን ሰብስክራይብ አድርጉና ዝግጅቶቻችንን አዳምጡ። አዲስቅኝት የሚዲያ አገልግሎት
So yeah. you give us a satisfying ending, but do you think the Canadian society asked the same question when they were trial again, and when they were sentenced? The Canadian society asked the just question, why they were tried again, and why they were sentenced. So I think that's the question you expect from your audience, from your readers. Even we ask the same question. You give us to question ourselves. So
well, it's not easy. It's not cut and dry, and it's not black and white. So yeah, I very much want. I think the involvement of the audience comes when you decide, how were these hunters treated? Was it good or bad? Was the ending fair and satisfying or not? And I'm open to the readers or to the audience for the movie to let me know how they feel. So it involves the audience. It's not just me telling a story where it's all black and white. It does involve judgment on the part of the reader or the person who will view the movie.
That's interesting. Let me take you to another interesting novel of yours, the Black Donnelly. By the way, why you call it the Black Donnelly? I see sometimes the Donnelly, and I see sometimes a Black Donnelly. What's that black refers to?
Back in Ireland, there's a lot of reference to Ireland, because Ireland was a very violent society in the 1870s when the Donnellys came to Canada. and there was a lot of politics going on, and there were Catholics. It was all involved with Catholics, but some Catholics were very strict and would have nothing to do with Protestants. They would not. The Protestants tended to have more money than the Catholics, and so the Catholics. There were some right-wing Catholics that didn't want even to speak to a Protestant, even to have any business dealings whatsoever was sinful. And a lot of priests agreed with that. The Catholics should not associate in any way with Protestants. But then there were other Catholics who wanted to do business with the Protestants, who had more money. And the Donnellys were one of those. And back in Ireland, for the Catholics that associated with Protestants and did business with them were called blacklegs. Blacklegs, that was their nickname. I'm not sure what that meant, blacklegs, but that was very popular. They were called other things, but anyway, blacklegs. And so the term Black Donnellys stuck. And when the Donnellys moved to London, the conservative Catholics called them black. Like blacklegs. They called them they were blacklegs, and so they got the name Black Donnellys.
The story is very interesting. It's a very, very, very captive story. Why you choose that story to tell?
Well, the Black Donnellys is well known. It was a huge story in the press, and basically in 1880. A group of townspeople, about 40, a mob, basically, a mob of vigilantes, met in a church about 2 miles from the Donnelly household. And the Donnellys were 7 boys, 7 sons, and the mother and father, and 1 daughter, Jenny. But there were 7, big, strapping, handsome guys, and the Donnellys had done well by doing trading in horses. They had a stagecoach company. They did a lot of business with Protestants. And the local priest, Father Conley, hated that. And the Donnellys became prosperous because of their business dealings with Protestants. And so the more conservative Catholics were against them. Yeah. Because they associated in any way with Protestants. Yeah. So, and they believe, the Donnellys believe that they should not bring their biases over to Canada. Canada was a new country, so they should do business with Protestants, and Catholics and Protestants shouldn't go on fighting as they had in Ireland. They should get along. So they did business, they became prosperous, but the local priest hated this. And he literally had sermons against the Donnellys personally, saying that balls of fire will fall on their heads if they continue to do business with the Protestants. So it was very overt. It was like that. And so the Donnellys made a lot of enemies. Yeah. And finally, on this one night, February 3rd in 1880, it was a cold winter's night, they met at a schoolhouse, the vigilantes, about 40 of them. Yeah. And they were armed with clubs and shovels and picks and some guns. And they marched on the Donnelly house. And they were going to teach them a lesson. And what happened when they got there is, a huge fight broke out, and they killed almost all the Donnellys. Wow. And the boys and the parents were killed. And there was a cousin from Ireland that was there that they brutally killed, the vigilantes. There was a boy under the bed, Johnny O'Connor, a very interesting character who lived until 1947. And he was under the bed and he saw everything. He knew the vigilantes. He could identify all of them because he was in the town, and his family, were very involved in the community. And so he testified against them. but he was, at the time of the trial, he was only 13 years old, but he escaped the burning building. He was under the bed and they burned the building to the ground. And he only got out at the last minute. He thought they would shoot him, and they would have. If they had caught him, they would have killed him. And he leapt out the back door and ran across the snowdrifts, the neighbor's farm down the road. He was barefoot, didn't have a coat on a cold night. Anyway, he made it to a neighbor's farm, and he was taken in and protected. But so,
I mean, this is a very powerful story. So you tell this, even today, human is living with what happened in the past.
Yes.
We're still, using our past history to kill each other today.
Yes, absolutely. They brought all of that conflict from Ireland to Canada, and it was just as strong here. And that's the tragedy of the whole thing.
When you first contemplate about this story, to tell this story, what was touching you deep in your heart?
I can tell you that my father grew up on a farm. He was a farm boy west of London, Ontario, and we would go to visit the cousins in the summertime. And we were driving home, just my father and I, from the cousins, and he said, "Let me take you to this little town, Lucan." There's an interesting story involved in this town, Lucan, about the Donnellys. And I didn't know the story, and he hadn't told me, but we went to Lucan, and we stopped we went into the general store, and we went up, my dad went up to the guy behind the counter, and my dad was, sociable and gregarious, and he goes up to the guy and he says, "So, we're here. We'd like to hear about the Black Donnellys. What can you tell us about the Black Donnellys?" And the guy behind the counter stared at him, and I remember this memory. I was 11. The guy across the counter goes, "Around here, we don't talk about the Donnellys." And that was all he would say. And as a kid, I went, "Oh my gosh, who are the Donnellys? What's this all about?" And so over the years, I have tried to tell the story in film. I was contracted to write it as a miniseries almost 20 years ago. Over the years, it's been one of those projects that I've tried to write. I've been paid to write and contracted, and for whatever reason, it didn't go forward. And so in 2005, I had written it as a miniseries, and all of the management at CBC changed. And when your management at a broadcaster changes, all of the projects go out the window. So my wife said, "Well, write it as a novel." So I'll take all this material, and I wrote it as a novel. But it's always been in the back of my mind. And finally, I went ahead and wrote it as a novel, and there it is. And it tells the story, I think, very well. And now I'm working on a series based on the Black Donnellys, based on Cursed, my book, and that's going well. COVID kind of put the series on hold, but I'm hoping it will go ahead. We have 4 great scripts ready to go for the first season, and we'll write a few more.
That's very interesting. We are living in a very tough time now. Many things happening everywhere, all over in the world, and people are committing a crime somewhere and running to another, and a lot happened. So do you think this is a very interesting time for a novelist or a writer to tell stories, and people are ready to read stories of this kind?
You're absolutely right, Gizahan, that this is not a great time in world history and what's going on with the conflicts all over the world. It really is a crazy time. And you know what I think? I think people are exhausted with conflict. I think people want comedy. They want romance. I think they want to, they're tired of all of these tragic stories and war and death and all the rest of it. So it's like World War II. In World War II, Hollywood was putting out movies that were romantic comedies that were, there were a few movies that dealt with the war, but the war was in people's faces, and they wanted something to distract them. They wanted something to make them happy, entertain them, get their minds off the war. And I think that's what people are going to be looking for right now in the world. And the world is so much tragedy and war and conflict that even though that's kind of my specialty, the movies and the books that I write have to do with.
No. Why I bring this question is, a lot of things happening. So even in our society, where I came from Africa,
yes,
people came here, with different stories, and some criminals who made crimes back in Africa are living here as free people, as if they do nothing. But for the writer, this is a gold mine. So this is a gold mine. So we can tell stories. Your way of telling the stories is very impressive, because sometimes people might run away from justice, but they can't write from the eyes of the writer. From the you can trial them on your book, on your novel. If you can't get the right justice in life,
yes,
you can have a justice on the imaginative world. That's
you can write about it. It's the old saying, the power of the pen.
Yeah.
You can write it and get it out there, and there is certainly power in that.
Yeah.
And that's why the Writers in Exile group is exciting because you get the truth out. Because I've never in my career, in my life, I've never seen the truth so under attack that people can tell outright lies and get away with it. I've never seen anything like that before. So it is really important that the truth get told, and by good writers that can write thorough and convincing pieces about an event or a circumstance or a war or a criminal or a politician. Writing becomes that much more important.
You are, I know, beside your writing novel and the film, you are supporting the Writers in Exile group. You are giving workshops, you are running this reading event. So you are doing a great thing for the exiled writers. Tell us about what's your plan and what you feel about this group and the future.
Well, I think Writers in Exile is wonderful. It began as a very casual kind of a dinner club where we'd get together once a month, and I was, I was kind of the local guy and I was a writer, but all of these immigrants or refugees would come in from other countries, and they were fascinating. They would have a perspective, and they were pretty much all excellent writers in their own country. They had experience and they had been published. They were journalists and novelists and artists. And we would just get together as a sort of a dinner club. But that has evolved now, after quite a few years, into being a little more proactive and doing things like readings. And we're talking, as you know, about getting refugee writers into the schools to talk to students and share their experiences there. And as I say, we're doing these readings. People from all kinds of different countries. That's, I believe, really important in the Writers in Exile. It's not just one or two countries where a tragedy is going on or a war, but it's 12 or 15 countries where all kinds of conflicts are going on, and the journalists have left for whatever reason, under whatever circumstances, and their voice is so important to get out there. And there is a consistency to oppressed journalists, whatever the country, whether it's, you know, in Central America or Africa or Asia. There's a consistency to the oppression of writers. And so it's like a brotherhood, sisterhood in writers in exile. And so it's very exciting for me. I mean, I was born in Canada. I'm this white guy, and I've never had to flee my country, which would be so heartbreaking. Yeah. But I love to associate and with these people and see what they're writing. And we have had success. We've put together an anthology called The Uncaged Voice that I'm very excited about. Cormorant Press is going to do it, and it's stories told by 15 writers. I think we have 7 women and 8 men, a really nice balance. We have, I think, of 15 writers, we have 14 different countries represented. And it's called The Uncaged Voice. And I see it as volume 1, because I think it will do well, and there'll be more of a demand. But it comes out, Cormorant Books, it's going to come out this summer. And so publishing takes a long time. Yeah. But I'm very excited about that. I think that will be terrific for the writers in the book, but also writers coming in after the book. Will just receive a higher profile from this publication. So yeah, I'm very excited about Writers in Exile, and of course, Geza Han is our leader.
Yeah. I'm so happy that, you know, working with you, sharing your great experience. It's really, you know, hands-on learning, and you know, you are the first. You are the first man to give me what Canada, what kind of country is Canada is, and you know, you showed me the first night I spent with you. You gave me the insights, and that's really impressive. You know, having your first night with a writer is very quite, you know, a start. So I always remember.
I wish I had done more. I gave you we had a spare bed.
I mean, you know, it's a good start. You give me, it's an eye opening, and I'm still working with you. And do you think, you know, taking this opportunity, do you think the writers in exile, exiled writers, are doing their best to establish as a writers, as a journalist in this country? And at the same time, do you think that from the Canadian government side or from the Canadian organizations and institutions, do they get any support to continue in their writing and their profession?
Well, I certainly think that that they can use a lot more assistance from the Canadian government. I mean, an investment, you know, just some funding to help with English classes, to get things published, to get a higher profile for these writers, so that they can make a living. They can make a living as a writer. Writing is a wonderful skill, and to practice that skill in a country with a different language is such a challenge and so difficult. So any way we can help that. The other thing for me is that a different perspective, a different look at the world is so important for Canadians, for this country as a whole. Getting a perspective from Ethiopia or Syria or Iran, or from the Kurdish point of view, or from Venezuela, or El Salvador, Guatemala, to get a perspective from a person who has left that country. I mean, it will make Canada so rich, and every way we can support that and encourage that, I mean, government programs, university programs, whatever we can do, and we must do more. I really do think we.
So grateful that you are willing to be part of our show and sharing your experience and your story with us. I can't wait to see both the movies, the Coppermine and the Donnellys. Hopefully it will come soon. And thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure talking to you, Kazan, and our friendship means a lot to me.
Hello and welcome to New Perspective አዲስቅኝት Media.
New Perspective አዲስቅኝት Media is a Toronto-based digital and broadcasting media outlet that focuses on immigration, literature and art, community and culture.
If you have comments, questions or suggestions, please email us at addisqኝት@gmail.com or call us at 647-761-7252.
You can listen to our weekly live radio on iHeartRadio, subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our app. Please visit our website at www.addisperspective.com.